Into what is actually, I was coming across this, but David talks about it. He makes a proclamation about how wealth was going to be in his line forever, but the wealth that he ended up having. And I look at Solomon. Solomon was one of the most wealthy kings, so this ended up being in the material sense. But what we end up actually seeing is also that through Christ, it was not only in the material sense, but it was within the spirit. The wealth that he ended up having ended up being actually dual, to where you ended up having a duality of it, to where it was actually in the spirit and in the world that he had these riches, so that monetarily they had everything that they needed, but also you end up having it to where all of the great kings that came through had the divine teaching that came not only from David, from Solomon, but went all the way back to Abraham. And if I want to jump back into Abraham, what was the actual riches of it? Because that's where you start to see the wealth of Israel. Well, then you actually got to where you get the line and you can see where they come through. But it was actually through Noah's family that ended up having the original instruction through God, that ended up going back through, well, Abraham was the first ones that could speak to it, and Yaakov, and then Israel actually was able to come through and teach to all of his children, so the 12 tribes. And this is how you ended up having that instruction that came through the family line that was given through the line of Jesse, and actually you ended up having with Boaz, kind of ran into it. And they brought this all the way through, and then God came back and also was able to periodically show back up on the scene. So for instance, with Moshe Rabbeinu, this wasn't a family line where they brought through, but God actually came down and was like, all right, well, I'm just going to give you the instruction into it. But all of them had that wealth because of the knowledge of God, so that the wealth about everything wasn't necessarily that they ended up having the physical monetary wealth, although yes, that's true. But if I just look at Jesse, for instance, Jesse wasn't a really wealthy man. He was just kind of a hard-working man. He had a bunch of kids. He ended up running the family, running the shepherd, and actually you get the Yahweh Roy, what is my shepherd? That reminds me of old Jesse, actually, and David before he was the king. That was the wealth of it. It was having that connection with God in a way that they were guided within the spirit, and that went through the line. They ended up teaching this respect that they had for the children, for the love of God, and for the same passion that they had, and passing that down through the ages. The actual wealth that we end up having was with God. And so if you look at it, you end up finding, well, actually, within Judea, all of the prophets and actually kings ended up both rising and then falling. And usually what you'd have is one would fall, and then they would end up rising up in the next generation. Even Noah fell. And when he did this, what he ended up doing was setting it up to where it showed a perfect example how a man could be righteous for 500 years and then have some difficulties. Sometimes we go through it to where we have difficulties in this life and then we rise. Solomon said that the righteous man, he falls 7 times and yet he rises. The idea is not that we're going to fall. The idea and the point is that we're going to get back up. And that when you have God with you, the riches in this world come from the tenacity to be able to continue through the strive, to be able to sit again and again, and to elevate your thought, your perception, and your mind through Christ, so that you end up having a new way of realizing that Christ is with you and sharing that with everything that you do and through all the world. So if I want to look at that, the wealth of this world, that truly is where you end up having that increase. That's Joseph. And Yusuf is actually, the way that he had the dreams and up to heaven, he also ended up having it the same way with Yaakov in that ascension that they had, but he was able to see it in the spiritual sense. And so when Israel ended up going to look into the future as he was passing, Joseph had the same ability. And so he could see this, and the family taught that. And so the same way that David ended up looking in the way to where he had, you read through the Psalms and it's evident, he saw everything in a different way. The way that he started to see everything changed it to where, all right, if I want to look at it like this, what I can end up seeing is that God is able to show you a new way of perceiving everything, so that the wealth of this world was the perception, it was the mind. If we can see everything the way Christ saw it, the way Israel saw it, the way David saw it, that's where we truly have the wealth, and how we end up having that opportunity to grow in the spirit. And so that's the idea. So when I ask for the wealth of this world, truly, better than riches and gold is knowledge and understanding. That's what we want to have, is that chokmah and binah, and to seek that. This is Reverend Casey Carroll Milano. I'll see you.